It's our time. It's our time.
Hey there, I'm Shub from North of Normal, and this is One Song, One Story. The concept is simple. Each guest brings a song, and together we explore what it means to them. The memories it holds, the feelings it unlocks, the story it tells about who they are. Today's episode is about endurance, healing, and what it means to move through life's hardest moments with intention. I'm joined by Dr. Jonathan Locust, an academic, leader, and deep thinker whose relationship with music stretches far beyond nostalgia. Dr. J brings a song that becomes a compass during a serious health crisis, a reminder that even when you're in the middle of a struggle, you're still moving forward. We talk about music as medicine, mindset as power, and the idea of going through the wire as a way of understanding growth, pain, and transformation. All right, let's begin. Enjoy. Welcome to the One Song, One Story podcast, Dr. Jonathan Locust, aka Dr. J. How are you, sir?
I'm feeling great this morning. How are you doing?
I'm very well. We were just talking before, so you're on day 3 of a water fast right now. How's that going for you?
It's going really good. Now for me, fasting has become like just more of a consistency especially with a lot of the things that are happening politically. It's a way for me to um, send positive energy and to be able to get to know myself more. So I do a monthly fast, a water fast for 3 to 5 days at the end of every month. And it's been great. The people that have taught me this, I've seen people who are in their 70s and 80s look like they're in their 40s because they've been fasting consistently.
Wow.
So it's one of the things that I've just seen from my mentors that I've just included as a continuous practice. So I'm on day 3, and I'm feeling great, feeling connected, and ready to go.
Fantastic. I'm fascinated by fasting. I think I've done very little fasting. I've done some intermittent fasting. I've done a little bit of the 5-2, where 2 days, every 2 days out of 5, but I've never done a prolonged fast. So kind of find it fascinating. But even on intermittent fasting, there's some very real, tangible benefits I start feeling very quickly in terms of brain energy and fog lifting. But one day I will commit to trying some more. You've inspired me anyway. You've inspired me. And so you're on day 3. If your day today was a song, what would the title of that song be, and what would the vibe be?
It can this be different from the song that we picked?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Um, I would say the song that would be there's a gospel song. So I grew up very religious. I grew up in the church, so I grew up listening to gospel music.
Yeah.
And there's a black gospel group called the Winans. And there's a song they used to they have called like Tomorrow. And they're like, tomorrow, I think about tomorrow. Very beautiful song. So that song will come to mind because tomorrow's when I get to eat.
Fitting. And what was the band name?
The Winans. So Winans.
Okay.
And it's a family. So it's a family of brothers and sisters that are phenomenal singers. And there was a group called BB and CC. So those like the Winans family, all of them were phenomenal singers. But
Yeah.
just growing up, since my father was a pastor, I couldn't listen to music with cursing in it until I was maybe 14 years old. So it was all gospel music that I had to listen to with my parents until I started sneaking in other music and stuff like that. But
Wow. I'm going to link to that as well as your song choice, but huge fan of gospel, man. I think when I was in my teens, I kind of discovered so much Black American music like Stevie Wonder and Sly Stone and all this stuff. And then a little later, I found gospel. I was like, oh, so that's where all this has come from. Like it's, without gospel, there wouldn't have been that music. You can hear it in the rhythm, the singing, everything. It's like it feels like Born Out. It's just stepped outside the church and got a little nastier, but it's
That's it.
it's still there.
That's funny.
Yeah, so I'm going to link to that one too. And one thing I like to do with guests on the podcast is think of a song that connects us. Now, we've never met before, but I was reading your bio before, reading a little bit about the journey that you've been on. And the song that came to mind was Butterflies by Alicia Keys, which is one of my favorite
Mm.
songs, one of my favorite Alicia Keys songs. But I mentioned that one just because it's butterflies, the link to transformation, and you feel like you've been on quite a transformative journey. You brought an amazing song with you, and I'm sure when we get into it, we can hear a little bit about the journey that you've been on. But just to bring listeners into your world, I mean, it would be great if you could give us a quick overview to kind of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'll make it as brief as possible. If there's anything you want me to dive into a little bit more, let me know. But originally from Cleveland, Ohio. Right now, I currently reside in Tampa, Florida. Um, I had a very religious background, as I said, growing up. My background has been in higher education, so I have been on a path of being a university president. I was a vice president in the Minnesota system, and my PhD is in research and measurement. And through that time in higher education, had a health issue, which I did a fast, which I healed myself, which got me to thinking about things differently. And from there, I started to see what is a problem I went through during my health issue. And it was being able to find vetted and trusted um, spiritual and conscious support where people didn't try to scam me. So that's one of the things that we're building with Consi Rise. We have a network of vetted and trusted practitioners. And we have a community experiences like the community fast, which we're doing now. And we just like that place where regardless of what you're going through, you can find support that is free. Nobody's going to try to charge you anything.
Mm.
And if you want more structured support, we do have options that you can pay for. But we're a support free network. We have free events and free experiences that people can be able to be able to help grow their conscious.
Wow. That sounds really cool, man. Really cool. And I guess quite the departure from academia. So that's quite the journey you've been on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it was, it was really something that when I think about the different the different paths and how kind of similar how different they are, but how similar they are, right? Because
Mm.
in this one path of academia, like we're looking at research, data, what makes sense, right? Predictions and things like that. And in this other realm, I'm seeking and trying to understand those same things more on the spiritual and metaphysical level. And it's the same kind of work, just one requires maybe a little bit more faith, a little bit more creativity. Um, that, but a lot of it has really been the same. It's just seeking to understand, being able to get data and seeing how that data can inform my decisions and how I can become a better person to be of service to more people by way of
Mm.
that data receiving from that information.
Okay, I like it. I like it. It's like data for good. Data for good. Yeah. And we touched on it a little bit before. Obviously, this is a podcast about music, and I'm always keen to know from my guests that come on, like, do you have memories, those memories of when music first became part of your life, or do you remember that first song that you fell in love with? Now, you were mentioning before there was a lot of gospel growing up. Be keen to know if you remember that moment, and if you could tell us about one of those moments when you were growing up.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the memories that I think about was on the way to church. So my father had a church in Cleveland, and on the way to church, we would listen to um all different types of gospel music. But my father's favorite was a guy named James Cleveland.
Mm.
And my father really liked a guy named James Cleveland. I think part of it was because maybe because we lived in Cleveland and we were in California, but before there, so maybe think that was something. But I can recall being in the car and him singing, and my dad like really being so in tune and like just free from it, like really into the music. And there would be very kind of few times where I would see him like that, and just that seeing him, that experience of how involved and engulfed he was in the music, I was like, man, he was just mad at me. And if this is if this is calming him down, man, this is magical. So so I started then really kind of looking at music a little bit differently in regards to not just the beats and things, but the word. What is it actually saying? What is the
Mm.
meaning? What is the intention? What is the intention behind it?
Okay, beautiful. And you mentioned before, I think you said it was age 14 when you probably started experiencing other music outside of gospel. What was that journey like for you when you sort of stepped outside of gospel and opened it all up?
Yeah, so it was one of those things to where I was already kind of listening to the music, but my parents would not let me purchase a tape, or remember it was tapes. So you couldn't get a tape or a CD that had parental advisory.
Yeah.
So anything I had, remember the parental advisory
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
in the bottom right hand corner? Anything I would go with, and they would be like, mm-mm. So I would have to at school, like, so know what the words mean. I just wouldn't know what the cuss words would be in between there because I could never listen to them. And we had we had the radio. So it was two things that come up. The time, the first CD I was able to get was Jermaine Dupri's Life in 1472. That
Okay.
album. And I can remember like the first track on there is Jay-Z's Money Ain't a Thing with Jermaine Dupri. And it just goes with DMX. And that was my like first CD I was able to buy with my own money that was parental advisor.
Mm.
So that memory comes to play. And then when I was when my father was in the church, we would do these Pentecost, which would be all of these pastors and churches convening in one area, which would be Birmingham, because that's where the national headquarters were. So there would be maybe at least 10 or 15,000 people from all over the world that would be here, that would be all church folks. And we would see a lot of different people and meet a lot of different people. But some of the folks that were down there were, of course, they were listening to Master P. And Master P hadn't made it up kind of up north yet to where we were. And I remember sitting in the car with my sister, and they're playing Master P, make them say, and I'm like, what is this? But I'm just like bouncing, and I'm nothing I've never heard before. But I'm like, what is this? It's Master P. And I go back home, try to find and look up it. But then it's like try to find stuff on MySpace and things like that, or to see if it's coming up on a radio. But those are like the two memories that I get of like different types of music that was different from, because we have Bone Thugs and Harmony in Cleveland. So they're going fast. They're singing. It's more R&B type things to where New Orleans has more of that bounce type music, and then Jermaine Dupri just has more of a repetitive beat type thing. So it was just really interesting when I started like traveling and getting access to these different musics that I saw was being made by these different cultures of Black folks that I just hadn't had access to because they went through different experiences and so forth.
Yeah, that's fascinating, man. And I think it's when you're younger, there's so much new stuff that blows your mind. I think when you get older, it happens less frequently. Like in the past 10 years, maybe I've heard one album. I was like, I've never heard anything like that. But when you're younger, every new genre you hear, you're like, no way, I never heard anything like that before. It's great. It's an amazing time. And there's nothing like that first time of having your mind blown, I think.
Well, no, and I was just gonna say that thinking about that, like those times where you hear genre of music. Like I remember when I was in college, I took a class called Love Songs, and I was like, this is gonna be a great class to pick up women. So I took the class, and believe it or not, I was like it was only like another guy in there, and once I saw him, he was like, okay, yeah, we're thinking the same thing. Um, but in that class, her name was Dr. Christina Firmer. Actually, we're good friends now because she knows I'm in academia. So it was a great class. But I ended up during that class, I ended up listening to the Beatles weekend work it out.
Mm.
And that was the first time I had heard that with the different beat changes. And I was like, man, what is, and that was a song that I would play consistently. I'll be playing rap music, then they'll be hearing some Beatles, we'll work it out. And the guys come back, what are you in here doing? But that song was like one of those things, it was completely different because of the beat change, and you got these so it was just, that was another song that I think about was a huge kind of shift for me to be able to say, "Wow, like this something that was new to me, but it was very innovative." I think the way they were doing it, by the way they were doing those beat changes in the middle of the song.
Mm. Yeah, that's super cool. I think in that sort of in my teens, yeah, there was so much new. I remember listening to Public Enemy, Fear of a Black Planet, and in the same era, like discovering Charlie Parker, and like completely contrasting old school, new school, but both just mind blowing to for a kid to listen to, I think. But yeah, mixed in with all of that pop. Yeah, it's a good melting pot. So I'm a songwriter, right? So all of this was like my formative. I was just drinking all this stuff in, and later in life, it somehow found a way of coming out. But and what role does music play in your life today? Is it something that you're always surrounded with? Is it something that you use at certain times?
Absolutely. So even when I'm working, I work with music. So normally if I'm working, I'm listening to some type of jazz or um lo-fi type music. I listen to music when I'm running. So if I'm running and getting the workout in, or if I'm working out regardless, um listening to music. And even if there's times where I may be feeling a little angst or a little angry, there are certain artists that I can listen to that if that can really, by the words of what they're talking about, and which I believe is also the intention of the song, to be able to help me be able to see the bigger picture, that this situation that I'm in is essentially a learning lesson, that I'm just grasping and understand the lesson that is behind this experience. So music has
Mm.
really been that case of, for me, of being able to help me do things that are difficult, that I may not want to do, but also kind of get me to a state of equilibrium.
I mean, I can massively relate to that. I'm a father of two young kids and trying to do various creative projects, and I probably suffer from overwhelm, sensory overload, whatever you want to call it. But I find myself using music nowadays as a tool. I've been listening to a lot of Jason Stevenson, who just has music on playlists that's at different frequencies, and one will be called, healing at 44 hertz, and another one
Mm.
is something else. But there's something about the vibration of it that just seems to like calm my brain down and get me into a different state. So I've never really used music like that before, but I'm starting to find it's like a very valuable tool the older I get. Is just
Absolutely.
put the lights off, put the blinds down, and play some lovely music that just brings you back down, and then you're good to go
Mhm.
again. Yeah, so very grateful for that indeed. And listen, I'm feeling it's probably a good time to jump into the song. Um, Great song, and I think it's a song everyone will know, and I can't wait to talk about it with you. I guess before we jump in, I think a quick heads up for anyone tuning in for the first time: this isn't a deep dive into music theory or production tricks or anything like that. This show is about the stories behind songs and the ways they become part of who we are. So if you haven't heard the track we're about to explore and that Jonathan's about to talk about, please take a second to pause, give it a listen, and then come back. And I think you'll feel that the conversation just hits a little deeper once the song's in your head. So, Dr. J, what is the song that you brought with you today, sir?
Yes, it's Kanye West's "Through the Wire."
Tune. Great tune. And always curious to know, like when I asked you to pick one song, um, did this one jump out, or were there a number of choices that you were kind of debating as to which one to bring on?
Yeah, there was like a number of kind of a number of choices I went through, but when I thought about pretty simply like looking at the podcast and what you asked, I was like, okay, this is the one because it's not only tied to so many different memories, but when I've heard some of his earlier work, it was like, what is this?
Mm,
I've just never heard anything like this before. So it was not only the sense of this song, of how I've been able to use it during hard times, but when I listened to it, I just never heard anything that sounded like that before, especially with, it's a Shaka Khan sample. So I've never
mm,
heard anything that even sounded so soulful. So to me, it was just like innovation, and plus it was, a lot of the music there was especially rap and hip hop and R&B were guys who were where the music were could maybe perceive, not all of it, but some of it could perceive this a little bit more violent,
mm,
not as far as maybe helping black culture and things like that. But here's Kanye West, he's wearing polo sweaters, so for somebody's like me, he's more relatable. Like I was in college when I was listening to Kanye West. So, I wasn't like doing bad things, well, selling drugs
yes.
or doing things that were illegal. So it was even somebody who was more relatable with things that was I was doing on a regular basis, who maybe had a lifestyle similar to mine in some of the other music that I was listening to. So there was even a
Yeah.
relatability aspect of it at that time when I listened to it too.
Cool, yeah. And you touched on it there. You said you were at college, but like set the scene for us. Do you remember when you first heard it? Like, where were you? Who were you with? Who were you? What was happening in your world at the time?
Yeah, actually I do. So I have a good friend named Chris, who's from Chicago, and we went to college together. So we would listen to a lot of different types of music, but he would also like bring over and share stuff like new music that had came out. And I remember, and I'm trying to think about which song came first. I don't know if it was Through the Wire, um, or she says she wants some Marvin Gaye, some Luther Vandross. I'm trying to think of it. I can't think of the name of the song, but when like that song and Through the Wire, but he was introducing me to a lot of these songs
Mm,
that he was hearing once he would go back to Chicago over the weekend and then come back on Sunday. Like this just came back. This is just on the radio in Chicago over the weekend that ain't even here. So he would play it and we would listen to it. And when I heard it, um, it was like I said, it was just we were in the dorm room, so we would see each other. If we did go away the weekend, we would come back on Sundays to reconvene and be able to have dinner and be able to kind of chill and relax and talk about the weekend. So we're sitting up in this would have been Clayton Hall on Ashland University's campus, if you what no one probably know where that is. But it was in the residence hall. We're on the seventh floor and he's playing it and I'm literally just like, What is this?" Because again, it was that Shaka Khan, and it
mm,
was I think also something too that when I listened to it, immediately thought this would be something that my parents probably would not complain about when I go home. because they would realize that it's a Shaka Khan sample. So they love gospel music, but they would always talk about how the R&B and things like that from their age was, of
Mm.
course, better than the music that we would listen to. So it was just almost this level of like, even though he was cussing a little bit, it was clean. But also what he was talking about, he had been in a major accident where he got his jaw wired shut.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
he had to basically overcome that to get a record deal. So even when you see the video, there's a video on it that was on MTV. That was, remember MTV when MTV was out.
Yeah,
Um, so that's the whole kind of situation and story when I first heard that song Through the Wire.
that's brilliant. And I mean, the sample itself, it's an amazing Chaka Khan song. And yeah, you mentioned it there, it's about that car crash. And apparently, whilst he had his jaw still wired, he managed to rap this song. It's some crazy phenomenal feat of someone coming out of a trauma and being like, I'm not even gonna process this. I'm gonna process it right now with the wire still on my jaw.
Yeah.
Which is pretty fascinating. And I guess you talked a bit about it there. What kind of hit you first? You heard Chaka Khan. Were you kind of taking in the lyrics as well, or was it just one big woof of like energy happening?
Well, it was really the beats and the production that I had never heard anything. I had never heard anything like that because before that there were there were samples, but they weren't samples the way Kanye West were doing. So Kanye
Mm,
West, he was taking like R&B songs and music, using their hooks, maybe changing it a little bit, and then making that the whole background of a song. And that just wasn't happening back then. So, and the other song I was talking about was Slow Jams. That's the song Kanye West and Slow Jams. Um, so that was the thing, was the production was just so different. That was more reminiscent of like a Stevie Wonder or some of the older music that I would listen to, because like George Clinton, the Ohio
mm.
Players,
Oh,
all of those guys, Earth, Wind and Fire. Like, actually, interesting story. I was born in Dayton, and my grandmother owned a beauty salon, so she had a few beauty salons in Dayton, and she would actually her beauty salon actually did the hair of Earth, Wind and Fire, Ohio Players, George Clinton, all those people in
wow.
the Dayton, Cincinnati area. And so music was really like, even though we would listen to
Yeah.
gospel music, my dad would always talk about the influence of the Ohio Players and things like that. So even when I listened to it, it was even Kanye West's, it was even reminiscent of that type of music, to where he was able to like bring that music and incorporate it and blend it into like modern day hip hop.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, the Ohio Players are like one of the funkiest under the radar bands ever. And like I always listen to that tune they did. I mean, they did so much different stuff. Some of it's like some crazy jazz inspired funk, but then the song, I'm struggling to remember the name now, about the worm. It's called like Funky Worm. But you listen to the keyboards in that, and that just feels like sort of the gangster rap keyboard lines 20, 30 years before it actually happened, those old analog.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, they were just doing they were doing a G thing long before a G thing was a G thing, they were
Yep.
incredible. Um, and bringing it back to this Kanye song. So listen, at the start, you kind of gave us a very brief overview of your journey and from academia, and then through transformation. So, when you first heard this song, whereabouts in that timeline were you?
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say kind of in that timeline, like maybe where had this song maybe came up to where it had been helpful. I would say like when I mentioned that I had my health issue. And that was something because again, Kanye West is literally rapping a song with his jaw wire shut. Um and it's great. So it's one of those things where it puts me in perspective of just because you're going through something that's difficult that you don't like, you may not necessarily be able to control that, but you can control the attitude that you have while experiencing that. And that was the thing that I really got from that song, from him almost losing his life to him being able to use this and see this as a moment to where he can still progress and not giving up. And that was what it was for me. Like I was during that health issue, everything on the outside was great. I mean, I had finished my PhD. Um, I had got a vice president position, which is what I was looking for to be able to then get a president position. So everything in regards to career trajectory was going great. We had our first kid. My wife and I was getting married
Ah,
that October. So everything like on the outside when you say was looking great. And then once I experienced this health issue, it was really this and doctors had told me. So medical doctors, and I would say Western medicine had told me that I would have to be on pharmaceuticals for the rest of my life. And during that time of just like thinking about how do I go about and heal myself, that song had just kind of kept playing in my mind through the wire. Cause what I'm going through right now was I'm going through wire. Now I know on the other side of that, I don't have to for a time the wire will be done for that situation, but I'm just
mm,
going through the wire right now. And it was what that song and a lot of those things that kept me to say, okay, knowing that this is a process, I'm going through the wire. Then I started also reading other types things that we talked about, more spiritual and conscious based things. But to keep it to music, I started to then think about as I'm going through this wire, everything has a lesson tied to it. So what is this particular lesson that is tied to that experience? And then
yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
me, it became a research question to then be able to understand what is the lesson, because what I've learned in as far as, things that if we want an experience to progress through or subside, if we can understand the lesson that's tied to it, which is why we're here in the first place, then that experience doesn't need to be there anymore. So I figured
Mm,
to heal myself. And that's when I started, learning about meditation and intentional fasting, and how fasting basically, when you fast, the body starts to consume itself. And the
mm,
first thing that starts to go are the things that are no longer needed. So we've looked at the things that happen when you fast, and like there's certain time frames of dopamine resets and things like that. But the thing is with intentional fasting, you can then direct that consumption to particular things, thoughts, and things to be consumed. So following that fast, you no longer have that baggage of things that you're dealing with. And over a 24-day water fast, on the outset of that, not only did I realize that I had completely healed myself, but was able to understand the lesson that was tied to that particular health issue, which caused me to have to go back and forgive some things for some people who did things to me when I was 10 and 11 years old. I had to forgive myself for things that I did to people under that mindset. Forgive myself, and even I even reached out to some people and apologized and say, this is what happened to me, and I apologize. And surprisingly, they were like, this was years ago. I'm forgiven, but it was for me to be able to cleanse
yeah,
myself.
yeah, yeah,
And that process for me. That song became really important during that process of healing, that healing journey for me during a
yeah,
water fast. Even during my water fast, I was still working out because my whole goal was to be able to eliminate this thing that is in my body. It does not need to be there. And it's the reason it's not going to be there is by way of me understanding why it's there. And so
Mm.
it would be this push of meditation, fasting, working out. So I was still running 4 to 8 miles, and I would run with the intention of, when I get back to this house, I need to have, or each mile, I need to have a better understanding of why I have this thing in my body.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, it's spoken like a true academic the way you gave yourself a research question and just set about writing a paper for yourself. I love this. but but also I really, really relate to some of the stuff you said. I mean, I guess there's always a different there's a million avenues into healing, right? I think what you've talked about there of letting go from mind, body, and spirit of things that don't serve you, things, resentment that you need to let go of, memory. For me, a lot of that's happened through plant medicines, but it seems like you experience a lot of that through your water fast. Um, but you talk with such amazing clarity about the way your mind works. Most people would be like, "Oh man, I got a problem. What am I going to do?" You're like, "I'm going to make this into a research paper, and then I'm going to go for a run and figure it out every step." And it's an incredible mindset. But listen, I got to know you touched on it there, and I said I've done very very limited fasting, but 24 days of a water fasting. So just lay that out for us. That's no food at all for 24 days, right? You're just surviving off water. Talk to us about kind of the journey you went through in that period.
Yeah, so it was really a time of like really seeking to understand, but I would say that I had in my mind was preparing that if this didn't work, I was already looking at research of people who had did the 40-day water fast, the
Mm.
Jesus Yeshua water fast. So I would think like even at that time, I had my mind set to look, I mean, I'm gonna do whatever it gotta take. It just because one of the things was we at risk that we wouldn't be able to have another child. And we wanted to, which we have another one. She's 4 years old. So everything worked, everything is great. Um, but it was really during that time to where, you know, I started to then really see after the third day you really stop being hungry. Now that doesn't mean that you don't see food commercials, right? Because you actually start to see how many more food commercials it is. And of course, they got the pizza looking extra cheesy, they got the burgers looking perfect, and they don't serve it like that, but it's looking so good. um, and then too, another thing that becomes difficult is since I was a VP in the system, I was getting invited to breakfast lunches, breakfast dinners,
Yeah.
breakfast receptions, to where I would be fasting and the people, it would always be these questions to where you would get certain cultures that would just be like kind of respected, you know. But some would be like, "You're not Muslim, why you fasting?" Well, there's other cultures that that you have to educate folks because
Yeah.
or it's not lit, so you're not eating fish, like, and it would just be this whole thing that sometimes people have to explain, like, well, this is more spiritual for me, this is more personal, this is more path of healing, and they'll be
Yeah.
like, so what religion are you? Well, this is more spiritual for me. Like, I guess if you want to ask, I'm more mystical Christian. Well, what is mystical Christian? So it'll be this whole thing that will kind of go in with in this education environment because people are just naturally curious. So we get into conversations to where like, all right, let's get back to this program, or let's get back to this lawsuit or whatever that we're dealing with. So that would be kind of some of the kind of day-to-day real challenges that you're still my wife and kids are still eating. So if they're still eating Chipotle smells good, or Mexican food smells good. So it would be those things that you would get through. But I would say on the spiritual end, or the things, you have a greater sense of connection. So during that fast, I had a greater sense of connection to all things that I have not necessarily been able to replicate or duplicate
Mm.
since that time. And it was annoying. So I would kind of walk past people and I would feel this intense sense of love and connection that they were a part of me. And
Mm.
I felt that, and this would, and I would say, put this in a cultural mindset of, as this is experiencing what's happening in the US. So we have like Tamir Rice, who was shot and killed, Aubrey, who was just running. He was running
Yeah.
and he was killed. So there were examples of, black men and being things happening to them, racist things that would be happening. And I still moving from Cleveland, from an area that I knew, to I worked for the state of Minnesota, but we lived in Wisconsin. We lived in a more kind of rural area. Um, but so but that doesn't mean that those fears aren't still there. But even during that fast, those fears actually changed into connections with people. Like, I don't feel fear, I feel love, and I feel a sense of connection around them. So that thing was happening. And then the second part is there was a openness now that I think that I have now with the environment and with nature that I did not have before. So I'll give you an example. Like, I run, and I ran back then, and I still run. I don't. I'm not able to run as many miles as I did back then because I've gotten a little older. But I would run, and those times where I would be getting like super tired. So let's say I'm doing like 8 miles, and mile 5 would be like when I would just be like out of breath, tired. I literally would see a butterfly that would come right next to me and just kind of go, and then I would notice that, and it would give me an energy to do maybe another half a mile. And then a bird, it would be a bird that would come and just like just fly right. And this and when this keep happening, it's not a coincidence. That's a
Yeah.
pattern. And I would see these patterns of things, up to where when I was fasting, these things of nature, I would get these things to say, keep going. And then I
Mm.
started to say, okay, then as I'm running, I know carbon dioxide, which is our waste, is the plants, is their food. So I'm going to dedicate my exhales for all the plants and trees that are on my run route. And the connection of things that
Wow.
would happen between these, it would be, I'm getting goosebumps even thinking about it, but there was really a connection that I had with nature that I still have now to this
Yeah.
day. And I think that fast was a door that had opened because of that fast and that prolonged with not eating, that greater sense of connection that I still have. And even now I'm in Florida, the birds look a little different, the butterflies look a little
Mm.
different, insects are a little different, but that vibration is still there.
Yeah.
And so that's been one of the things too that I think has been um the thing that's been one of the best things with a fast is you experience a greater sense of connection. And along with the piece of the mental part of knowing that you can do it,
Mm.
of telling yourself that I can actually do this, and a lot of it is, again, after you get past like day 3 or day 4, day 8 gets easier. Day
Yeah.
12 gets easier. Day 14 gets easier because it's like now I'm not necessarily in the habit of eating. I'm drinking, and now I would do water and green tea. So I would do non-caffeinated green tea because I'm a tea drinker. I don't drink coffee. We drink tea.
Yeah.
So I would do that. So for there it was, but then I was also, like I said, doing it for healing. So it was a question for me. So
Mm.
during that fast, it was a whole path of me trying to understand. And I'll even mention it. One of the things that came up that I realized that I had kind of forgot about was when I was 10 years old, I was sexually molested by older
Wow.
women.
Okay.
And that was something that I had completely forgot about that had happened to me, that when I was talking about having to forgive the people who did that, I had to go back and forgive those women who did that to me. Then again, I had completely blacked out, but that was the foundation of that lesson that I needed
Mm.
to learn to then be on that pathway of healing. But I would have never thought that that was connected to my healing journey, but it was during that fast that started revealing all of these different things. And the last part I'll say, because I feel like I'm prolonging this question, is when you're fasting and you intentionally are going without something, there's a conscious replacement of that. I truly believe that. And I don't believe to think it's just with me. I believe it's with anybody. I believe it's the law of nature, right? If you withhold something, you're doing something intentionally, there's going to be something that that happens. And for me, when I went without food with the intention of growing and knowing myself, I do believe there is a greater connection between the conscious and the unconscious self,
Mm.
or the veil between the two is thinner or gets loosened, and there's a flow of information that happens. And I believe that things that have happened to me, though it was in my conscious mind, the impact of what was in my unconscious mind. And through fasting and through that, I think there was a flow of to where things that had impacted me unconsciously were able to bubble up and connect to my conscious, where I could have a better understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I could listen to you talk about that all day long. It's fascinating on so many levels, and I was kind of drawing links with um, not only my own experiences, but a lot of indigenous thinking as well. You know, everything from the Native American sweat lodges to the indigenous peoples of Peru and plant medicines where you fast before because they all believe that the um, either getting rid of food from the body opens you up to connect with the nature, with nature, with the universe. But it's all about creating a pure body first, without all the stuff in. And it feels like so much of what you said you're doing that through fasting. And interestingly, as well, with plant medicines, they say that there's something happens, a reaction within the brain, that actually connects the conscious and the subconscious, and opens that connector so you can consciously experience things that have been in your subconscious for years and holding you back, and traumatic memories and stuff. But it's just fascinating listening to you talk about it, and especially, it sounds like day 3, day 8, you overcome that whole desire, as in like, oh, I want to eat, I really need to eat. And then you're just in it. And it's, for someone like myself who hasn't done it, that's very hard to get my head around, because I guess the first bit's the toughest by the sound of it, is thinking I'm hungry, or like, oh my God, I've got to eat something. And once you push through, you're like, oh shit, I'm good. I'm
Yeah,
just gonna go
yeah,
out for another run.
yeah. Well, and then too, I think the thing is, like, I've learned with with fasting is the times and habits in which I eat when I'm not even hungry. So I realized that even at times, if me and my wife are watching something, if I'm not hungry, I'll just eat. I may get some, and this could be at 10 o'clock at night, but I may get some potato chips. Now, I definitely shouldn't be eating that at night, really that late. It's not good for me. I'm not trying to tell anybody what they should be doing, but I think most people will say you shouldn't be eating that too late. But for me, it's been able to when I fast, I'm able to then see, okay, what are those? I can be more analytical. What are those times that I am eating that um I'm not necessarily hungry?
Mm.
And that has helped too. Another part, when you mentioned the indigenous culture. So when I was in Minnesota, one of my work was to be able to forge relations and have um, help our institution have a better relationship with the indigenous folks, which was specifically the Osheti Shakoween. So I work with the Osheti Shakoween and their elders. And one of the things that they would talk about is essentially how we eat and how they would eat, and how they would just eat not these kind of just big meals that we eat, but they would just eat throughout the day, like some berries here, to be able to keep going, some fruit here, and they'll just kind of use it as medicine, as energy.
Yes.
Um, Kind of have culture has have shifted, and it's as a person who does research, I've been able to really see like the impact of a lot of these indigenous practices, whether they're indigenous folks in Africa and South America and North America or Europe, because there's all indigenous folks everywhere.
Yeah.
But to be able to see like a lot of these cultures, a lot of these practices have been lost due to capitalism or capitalistic research. Like even if you look at like breakfast, and you may know this, but Sigmund Freud's nephew was a gentleman by the name of Edward Bernays, and he was hired by the government a lot of different times. Where he's one of the reasons we eat breakfast in the U.S. Because he was hired by farmers unions because they had all this excess eggs and bacon and things like that. So
Wow.
they literally went to the food pyramid and created a new meal. Because if you looked at that before then, people didn't really eat breakfast the way they do now, and they created this whole first meal thing about why. Again, I'm not saying breakfast isn't healthy, but I'm saying we weren't eating breakfast before this research and before he was paid to actually figure out how to make people eat breakfast. So there's all these different things that I look at, these experiments on people, and I ask like, well,
Mm.
why are we doing certain things, or why do we do certain things? And when you figure out the intention behind it, um, you start to kind of just rethink why you're doing things and the habits you have. And are these habits necessarily my habits, or are they programmed? So
Yeah, no, I get that because I think, I mean, certainly in my own life, it doesn't feel good for me to eat a big meal even at 7, 8 p.m., but it feels really good to eat around 4, 5 p.m. But then if you think of that in the context of the working day, in the working day, there's few slots where you get to eat. So it's like, once the working day takes over, you start having to fit your eating in around the working day, and it's like a breakfast, lunch, late dinner. And you're suddenly thinking, well, now I'm not in patterns that are great for my body, but it's the only time I get to get to eat.
right.
It's fascinating to see how it shifts around. Um, um, I'm going to take it back to the song a little bit because we talked about the song, and then you talked about this amazing journey that you've been on. I'm curious to know, when you listen to the song now, like, what do you feel? What does it carry for you? Has it changed in terms of how you listen to it or what it means to you?
Yeah. So I mean, when I do hear it, I'm like, first I'm like, oh man, like this was 22 years ago. So it's kind of like this realization of like I remember when I would think I was old, even though I don't feel old, So that's kind of like the first thing that comes to mind, like, damn, this was 22 years ago. So, and then after I get past that, I look at my life and how I think I've maybe done through different wires. Cause and if I related to that song to Kanye's, I've had different accidents, like not literal car accidents, of course, but I've had
Yeah,
different accidents that were compared to me going through my situation of going through different wires. And I think about my health issue. I think about um different lawsuits that I've been named in, just because of my VP position, but just all types of things that have taken up time, that have been difficult for me, that I can step back and say, well, did I make it through the wire? Did I
yeah,
actually
yeah,
make
yeah,
it through those wires? And um, I can say like, yeah, for the most part, I have. Now there's other wires I'm going through now, right? That because that I'm experiencing and going through now, but overall, it makes me feel good because I can say, from an analytical perspective, I got a pretty good hit rate of getting past these things. And getting through these wires. So it's more of a joyous song, not of the, what is this? I've never heard of this song before. No, it's more reminiscent of looking at my life's past to be able to say, overall, I have a pretty good percentage of getting past these wires, but that gives me the motivation to continue this current wire that I'm currently
Mm.
working through now.
Yeah, it's fascinating. There's so many more years to go, and so many more times that you'll probably listen to this and reflect and be like, "Oh shit, yeah, more wires and more wires," and
Yeah.
I'm still coming through. I'm still coming through. That's really cool. That's really cool. Uh, if someone else were to cover this song, who would you want it to be, and why? You could just say, "No way, no one's going to cover this song."
Oh my goodness. That's a really, really good question. Cause I think if it was somebody who would cover it, I don't know if I would necessarily want to. That's a good question. So my first response would be, not to remake it, but if I had a choice, I would say that it would be cool to be able to have. There's an artist that I listen to who's more of a spirit. Well, I don't want to say spiritual because I don't want to put her in that category. But to me, it seems more spiritual to me,
Mm.
in regards to other music we listen to. And her name is I pronounce, well, it's like O. So it's like, parentheses, three parentheses with a O in the middle.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you heard of French kiwi juice, FKJ. So that's
No, no.
his partner. Oh, he but they make phenomenal music, and it's real like soothing. And so she'll do concerts, and after her concert, she'll give out plants at the
Wow.
end of her concert. So we're actually going to see her in Miami. My wife got me tickets, got us tickets to go see her in Miami in February. So we'll be doing that. But I would say somebody I wouldn't necessarily want like I would say like a big hip hop artist.
Yeah.
Because I think that it would be something maybe more on a or more somebody more on a creative end that could come in and say, let's this is how we could do this maybe a little bit different and make this.
Yeah.
And I would think for me it would be like, how can we make this song like high vibrational? Because I don't think it needs more more just hardcore lyrics, but how could it be made to be like more uplifting? Like
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think of like how could that song be elevated to like a Pharrell's happy? Cause I'm
Yeah,
happy.
okay.
Oh, that's how I kind of think about it.
Yeah, very nice answer. Or we throw it back to Chaka Khan and be like, "Your turn again."
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Yep.
Oh, listen, we're starting to come towards at the end of the conversation, and I've enjoyed this conversation so much. But before we close, looking back on what we shared and this song and these stories and the memories, is there anything that stands out for you right now, or anything new that's come up for you at all?
Yeah, I would say the only thing that really comes up is when I think about that song is, there's always something that is going on. There's always maybe a wire that we're going through. That may be a little wire, maybe a smaller wire that we got to just deal with for the day, or maybe a longer wire that may be a longer term wire that we're dealing with. But I would say if we could understand like the lesson behind that wire or the wiring behind the wire,
Mm.
um, then it allows us, I would say, an acceleration to be able to get through that wire. Because if we're moving past it, we're still in motion, but a lot of times we need an acceleration to then maybe progress past it at a faster rate. And what I've found is that acceleration comes with not only intention, but the intention of understanding what is the lesson behind this wire. And that is
Mm.
something that has served that has been helpful for me, but also when we've read a lot of the people who have been talking about these things, who are a lot smarter than me, they've said the same things, and I've used that same model and framework in my life when I'm going through difficult things. So that's the only thing that I will add is for anybody who may be going through a wire, long or short, you'll get through it, understand the lesson behind it, and then that's an accelerator through progressing past that wire.
Beautiful words. Um, Listen, thank you for bringing this song and for bringing yourself so openly. It's been a real pleasure to share this time with you. Before we go, where can people find you, follow your work, connect with what you're creating right now?
Yeah, you can follow me, Dr. Jonathan Locust Jr. So I'm on LinkedIn, at J Locust Jr., JLOCUSTJR on Instagram and TikTok. And then Consirise, which is CONSCIRISE.com. Come there. Like I mentioned, we have events that are going on. We got free community things. So if you're just trying to find a place with some people that are cool, where you can find some balance, we got again some free communities. We also got things if you want more structured guidance. We got some subscriptions. And then we just started a concierge plan. So for some people who really, really want to go a little bit deeper and understanding consciousness, we do some survey, we pull metrics and things to really understand how we can not only can help you grow, but the practitioners that we have and the variables of measuring that. So in regards to consciousness, we really see it as why we're here. So and I'm a lifelong learner. I know I learn from other people. So if you have a story that I can learn from, I would love to meet you. I would love to hear from you because that's how we learn and grow together.
Hmm. That's great, and I'll probably drop a link to the website in along with the episode because it sounds like you're building something really pretty beautiful and powerful there. Dr. J, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for allowing me to be here, and thank you for all the work that you're doing for just bringing high vibrations to people.
It's our time. It's our time. It's our time.